you're given like rote religion without meaning, it's going to have no meaning for you. And if you're brought up with religion that is really like vested with deep meaning,
Right.
that maybe you'd be one would be more positively inclined.
Well, I also think this, and this is not, this is sort of like adjacent. This is question adjacent to what you just said. But I also think that when we were in San Francisco, we were very much like the Pfeffermans, not really
Like the
just
characters
running.
on Transparent. Yeah.
Exactly. We were just, we didn't run to the synagogue. We went to, on the high holy days, we went, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, and we did the Seder, and we did all that, and we had the sukkahs and things like that. But we were sort of, West Coast Jewish. We did the same delicatessen runs that Shelley does, and that was another thing when I read the script. I went, I'm in here. This is my family. I'm right in here. And that sense of humor that they have, where pain is humor and humor is pain, and you zig and you zag. Jill knows that like the back of her hand. She is brilliant at that. So you're laughing at a funeral, and you're crying at a comedy show.
My guest is Jeffrey Tambor. He stars in the Amazon series Transparent. All of season 2 will be up tomorrow. After we take a short break, we'll talk about going bald in his teens and about the famous commercial he was in back in the late 70s. I'm Terry Gross, and this is Fresh Air.
Family Foundation supports WHYY's Fresh Air and its commitment to sharing ideas and encouraging meaningful conversation. Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from the Pajamagram Company, offering matching holiday pajamas for the entire family, even the cats and dogs. Over 27 family sets online in knits, fleece, and flannel at pajamagram.com. And from Vonage, offering cloud-based solutions with 40 built-in calling features like video conferencing, virtual mailbox, and work from anywhere at Vonage.com. Vonage, the business of better.
A working script for a Save the World drama starring all of us and the Terminator.
I never ever listened to the naysayers. I eliminated the words impossible from my vocabulary. So when people said that it can't be done, I did it.
Delegates at COP21 try to do it with a challenging draft agreement on climate change. The details next time on The Takeaway, weekday afternoons at 3 on 93.9 FM.
WNYC support comes from Noises Off, returning to Broadway in a Roundabout Theater Company production. Andrea Martin and Campbell Scott lead the cast of Michael Frayn's backstage comedy, directed by Jeremy Harron. Previews begin next Friday. Tickets at roundabouttheater.org.
You're listening to Fresh Air with Terry Gross on WNYC. Coming up next, it's The Takeaway on 93.9 FM, and on AM 820, it's The World.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross, back with Jeffrey Tambor. He stars in the Amazon series Transparent as a transgender woman transitioning to female late in life. All of season 2 will be up tomorrow. Tambor co-starred in Arrested Development as George Bluth Sr., and on The Larry Sanders Show, he played Hank, Larry's sidekick on his late-night TV show. You've said in other interviews that your father gave you the advice, don't celebrate, they'll take it away from you. And this is the kind of advice from, like long periods of suffering and persecution that Jewish people, faced through the centuries. But were there times in your family where it was an official celebration, it was your duty to celebrate, like you're not supposed to be too happy, but on these days it's your job to be happy?
Well, my dad's thing was, we practically had "Don't Celebrate" printed on the napkins. So it was serious business. But his big thing is, I would say, Dad, I'm on Broadway with George C. Scott, and he would say, shh, don't say anything. don't tell anybody. Dad, I'm getting married. Shh, don't say nothing, don't do anything. And that was sort of the thing. So when I get awards, there's a little agita that goes on with this, because I can hear my dad going, shh, don't say anything, don't celebrate. So he honestly, because he was taught, don't celebrate, they'll take it away from you. And his parents were taught that, and his parents, because if you did celebrate and you were visible, it could be very, very dangerous.
Right.
So part of it is just, part of it is trauma, but part of it is fact.
But it doesn't exactly lead to understanding how to experience pleasure and pride and confidence.
Right. I don't know how to answer your question.
I guess it was really a question, yeah.
Yeah. No,
Was
it's
that
true.
your-
But do you want to hear a great moment, a great NPR moment?
Yeah, sure.
And it has to do exactly with what we're talking about. So when we started coming out with our show, and the reviews were just coming out for the first season, and I was very proud of it. And it could go anyway. Yeah. And so I'm taking my son up to his Boy Scout, Cub Scout camp for the day, and we're in the car, and it's on a Saturday morning, and we're driving. And NPR, we are both NPR fanatics, and he loves NPR, and he's 11. And all of a sudden, the NPR review comes on of Transparent. And I look in the back seat, I'm looking at the rearview mirror, and the reviewer, and it was a very nice review, mentioned my name. And I looked at him, and he had this smile on his face. And I will never, never forget that moment, because I think for the first time he knew what I did for a living.
Right.
And it was a great moment.
And you were allowed to be proud.
And I was allowed to be proud. I was, and I actually, you'll pardon the expression, cavelled.
That's Yiddish for kind of like shivered with joy.
Yes, it's the opposite of don't celebrate.
Right. You grew up in San Francisco. Your father was a flooring contractor, but I think he'd been a boxer before that. Is that right?
Yeah, he was a light heavyweight. Legend has it.
Mm-hmm.
Legend is that he sparred with Joe Louis. And again, let me really reiterate, legend. And his mom made him give it up because she was so worried about it. But I do remember once when he was selling tile out in the front of the store, and I saw him. He was a very big man. He was about 6'1", and he was stooped over in this position. It was very odd. It was a very submissive position. He was talking to this guy, this short guy, and I later found out that was his boxing trainer, and he was assuming the position that you do in the corner, listening to his trainer, and it was a very memorable thing. I also remember once when I was after he passed away, and I really loved my dad. I was very, very close to my dad, and my dad was very sort of funny about the don't celebrate, and he would rather I've been a teacher, and he was very, very nervous about my being an actor. And I went to clean out his office, and I never knew that he just never really, he just worried about me being an actor. He didn't say much. He didn't, in other words, and I went to get his trophies and his stuff out of his office, and I opened his office door, and there wasn't a single piece of wall space that did not have my picture or reviews on it. It was unbelievable. He had saved every review, but he never said anything.
So that's great. He was kind of proud and kind of bragging to himself in a space that no one would see.
Exactly, which is exactly right, and exactly what that
right,
and exactly what that generation did. He did see me on Broadway. I was with Robert Preston in Sly Fox, and then he saw me just before he passed away in my first film role with Al Pacino in Justice for All. So that was good.
So he was this like large, I imagine kind of really strong, physically imposing guy because he had been a boxer.
Mm-hmm.
So did he want you to be that kind of, like masculine, physical kind of guy?
I think he had sort of push-pull on it. you know, he was interesting. He worried about me a lot. He couldn't understand that why I was getting up and going to acting classes at the age of 12 and getting on the bus and going down and taking acting classes in San Francisco. He didn't quite get that. And yet he would come to the plays. And it was very odd. I later found out, somebody came up to me and said, you know, your dad supered at the Met. And I said, what? They said, yeah, your dad held a spear at the Met on Saturday. Supernumerary, in other words, an extra.
It was the Metropolitan Opera.
Yeah. And so I went, so maybe, I think there was a grudging sort of, there was a lot more to be said about Barney Tamber than he was letting on to.
Right. Now, you started losing your hair when you were still in high school. Was that a big deal? I know people who that happened to and to whom it was like just incredibly upsetting.
It was awful. It was terrible. I remember my father cried, first of all. And that's true.
Probably because he felt that he was bald and you inherited it from him and it was his fault or something.
Right. And that was his whole, that was another thing that was on the napkins. It's my fault. And so he was very upset. But the thing that turned out great was that I would go to summer stock and I would play all the older men. When I was growing up, there was a character on TV. There was a character stereotype. It was personified by Mel on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Do you remember Mel?
Mel Cooley, who was the head writer for the... Was he the head writer or the producer?
He was the producer.
The producer.
And so I was a young actor who was bald, but at that time, there was a thing on television that if there was a prototype or a stereotype of a principal was always a principal who was bald and mean with glasses, or the boss, the angry boss who was bald. That was personified by Fred Clark on the Eve Arden Show. And so that was the sort of thing that I sort of aspired to. I said, okay, well, I'll be the bald character man who will always be number 6 or 5 or 4 on the call sheet, and that's where I will live my life. And literally, that was my career concept.
My guest is Jeffrey Tambor. He stars in the Amazon series Transparent. We'll talk more after a break. This is Fresh Air.
WNYC receives support from Netflix, presenting the Netflix original film Beasts of No Nation from Cary Fukunaga, starring Idris Elba, now available on Netflix. Helen Keller International, a nonprofit dedicated to saving the sight and lives of children and their families in 22 countries, including the U.S. A brighter future is in sight. Learn more at hki.org.
You're listening to Fresh Air on 93.9 FM and WNYC.org.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from Warner Brothers Records, presenting Enya's new album Dark Sky Island, featuring the songs Echoes in Rain, So I Can Find My Way, and The Humming, music inspired by the stars, available everywhere now. And from Progressive Insurance, working to make progress for more than 75 years.
This is Fresh Air. My guest is Jeffrey Tambor. He stars in the Amazon series Transparent as a transgender woman. All of season 2 will be up tomorrow. I think probably the first place I ever saw you, although I didn't know it was you, was on an Avis ad. And Avis Rent-A-Car had this ad campaign. There's a period...
How can you possibly remember that?
Well, because... No, in looking up your work, I found this ad, and I remember these ads. There's a period when Hertz was like the #1 rental car agency, and they had this ad with O.J. Simpson running through the airport to get to the Hertz counter, and the gist of the ad was Hertz for people in a hurry. You know, and it's like the superstar agency for people in a hurry. So Avis, that was always like the we're #2, but we try harder rent-a-car agency. They had an ad in which like you're this like person on a business trip, is what we presume, and you're very beleaguered, and you're running through the airport like OJ, and you're jumping over a velvet rope like OJ in the airport, but you're panting, you're like mopping your forehead, and in this ad, an Avis representative catches up with you and says like, you don't have to run. And you go, oh, I
remember this.
I don't have to run.
I remember.
Let's listen to it. Let's listen to it. The first voice we hear, first voice we'll hear is the Avis representative, and then we'll hear Jeffrey Tambor.
I can walk through airport. I'm walking through airport.
Oh my God. I don't know. I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was Newark Airport, and I was exhausted by the end of the day. Isn't that funny that you should? You know, I forgot about that.
So what effect did this Avis ad have on your career? Did it help you get anything else? Other commercials or actual roles?
You have to understand, I've done about 10 to 12 years of regional theater, and then I decided to come to New York, and I had to start all over again. So I made my living doing commercials, and I did a lot because, again, there was that young husband, balding husband, sort of thing that was very attractive to advertising, and I did that for years. I made $40,000 my first year here, but I couldn't get arrested. I couldn't get arrested in any legitimate theater.
So one of the great roles that you played was on the Larry Sanders Show, and Larry Sanders was played by Gary Shandling, and Larry was this late night Tonight Show style host, and you played the sidekick, Hank, and your catchphrase was, you want to do it for us?
Hey now.
Yeah. And so I want to play a scene from the Larry Sanders Show in which Larry Sanders tells you that maybe it's time to drop your catchphrase, hey now. So here's my guest, Jeffrey Tambor with Gary Shandling on the Larry Sanders Show.
You know, Hank, I was just wondering why you say that hey now thing.
What do you mean?
Well, it's just something that you used on the show, and now you started using it in your personal life, and it's an affectation of some sort, isn't that? Did you ever say hey now as a kid?
No, I don't. I probably didn't. But I said hey.
Yeah.
And I said now. I said different times, but I never put them together till later in life. So in that sense, it's part of my personality.
You know, Hank, this isn't easy for me, but would you mind not doing it on the show anymore? Because, frankly, I'll tell you the truth.
Are you telling me that when you do your, you do this, that isn't the same affectation? That isn't the same as my, hey now?
There, you just said it again, and, you know, I asked you not to say it.
I can't say it off stage either?
It doesn't even exist. Use hey now in a sentence, Hank.
Hey now, that was real funny.
You know what, Hank? It's not even in the dictionary, hey now.
Okay, this is how I use hey now in a sentence, okay? You say, and of course, my sidekick Hank.
And of course, my sidekick Hank.
Hey now!
Hank?
That's a sentence.
No. Hank, listen. I just prefer you not do it on the show anymore, okay? I just, it gets on my nerves, it gets on the audience's nerves as well.
Sir. No,
Yes,
sir.
It does.
No.
Hank?
Look, you're not out there. And believe me, it's very big with the audience. And I'm going to tell you something else. I think it helps make the show work. It's part of our whole interplay on camera.
By interplay, you mean the times we're both awake?
Hey now.
Just cut down on it. Could you do that, please?
This is a scene from the Larry Sanders Show with Gary Shandling and my guest, Jeffrey Tambor.
Everything, when I watched Gary Shandling, I said, whatever he's doing is what I believe in. That's what I believe comedy is.